Hey, I'm Jen Poncelet, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about IB scoring, in particular, IB rubrics. So, we're going to talk about how to use those rubrics both for creating assignments and for scoring assignments. Our learning targets today are that I can create a formative assessment using IB rubrics, and I can find the resources I need when I have questions about IB rubrics. So, rubrics are ways of keeping track of things, and we have all been scored in lots of different ways throughout our experiences as both students and as educators. And those rubrics and those kind of scoring practices can look really different from letter grades to checks to smiley faces. And a lot of times, as teachers, we think that students should know exactly what we mean by our system. But when we think about how many systems students are exposed to, it's not surprising to know that scoring can be confusing. So when we're thinking about IB rubrics, these rubrics tell us what we want students to know and to do. And we're also laying out how well they know it and do it. So, for example, this is one of the criteria from language and literature, criterion A, which is analyzing. The IB lays out exactly the four strands of analyzing that are important. And then these rubrics that are provided to us by IB will say, in general, when there's an assignment that requires analysis, students should look at aspects of text, creators' choices, justification of opinions and ideas, and or looking at between texts. So I can take off different strands of this as an educator to think about what I'm focusing on. And I can also measure how well a student is doing in each of these areas in each strand. So students should see these not just at the end of an assessment when they've been scored, but also before an assessment. The rubric tells you exactly what the teacher is going to assess. So we have that IB language, but then also as teachers, we are going to describe what will that look like in each assignment that we do. That's called a task specific indicator. So this can help students focus their work on the skills and knowledge they're going to be assessed on. So they're not just trying to do everything perfectly. And as we know, when we try to do everything perfectly, then nothing gets done well. So what we look for is each level on the rubric really describes a step along the way of learning, and the feedback describes what your student knows and can do. IB rubrics are purposefully written so that the 1-2 level is at the top. So as a teacher, we should be looking at what can a student do. So if a student can provide minimal identification and comment upon significant aspects of text, then we look at the next level. Can they also provide adequate identification? Can they provide substantial or perceptive? Once I get to a spot where it's like, well, I don't think they were perceptive, then I might go back up and say, all right, then they are substantial. And in that way, that's how IB is really strengths based. It's not a deficit based, but an asset based system. We look at what they can do and then go from there. You can also um, see how your student can continue to grow and improve. All right. Now, sometimes we're intimidated by these rubrics because they are very wordy. But these, what we want to look at, especially on the rubrics that IB provides us with, is those bold words. And often those are either qualifying words like minimal, adequate, competent, and sophisticated or effective, or they might be what are called command terms. And we'll get into those in a different lesson. But those words really show us how students are growing. These rubrics can really be helpful and be a learning pathway for students so they know what is coming next. So students shouldn't just see rubrics at the end, as I've been saying, but they should practice and get formative feedback on the strands of the rubrics throughout the unit. And they should reflect on that feedback and use the rubric as a guide as they're preparing for their summative assessment. So the rubric is really can be a lesson planning tool for you. So here are some examples of ways that teachers have done that. You can see in this assignment, this was a design assignment for criterion C, which is creating the solution. They have the rubric language here. It's a pre-write handout, right? It tells them exactly what to do. This is the rubric language to construct a logical plan, which outlines the efficient use of time and resources sufficient for peers to be able to follow to create the solution. So these are the three questions that they are going to answer in order to work on that rubric. Here's another one from language and literature. So we're working on comparing characters. The rubric language, we're looking at criterion A, analyzing. And so this is the rubric language, and this actually shows the students 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, 8. So they're looking from identifying to describing to comparing and contrasting. And this gives them the information on what to do. Now, this is a rubric that is for a summative assessment. So you can see that it's not just one, but three strands that are compared. So rubrics will help us assist students as they are moving from their kind of minimal understanding to being able to show what they know and use what they know to make positive changes in the world. In your mastery check, in your skills check, you are going to be creating a formative assessment using a rubric. So I'll also provide this slideshow so that you can go through, and as well as some other examples of what teachers have done to create formative assessments using IB language and rubrics. Make sure that you ask me or your mentor teacher when you have questions.